Hello, and welcome everyone to the Project Like a Girl Women's Empowerment and Youth Mentorship session. On behalf of the HER-DU committee, I want to thank you all for being here today and taking part in the 26th annual HER-DU conference. My name is Shay Lineberry, and I serve on the marketing committee for HER-DU, and I'm honored to be here with you all today. I also want to introduce our conference volunteers, Joanne, Trisha, and Hillary, and video service member, Weston. We will all be on the Zoom session today should anything come up related to tech, general questions about the conference, or whatever else is on your mind. We'll be here to help. For any questions that we receive, we are going to be using a strategy called progressive stacking, a technique intended to give marginalized voices a greater chance to speak, particularly in an environment where there is a dominant group present, which means that if you choose to self-identify as belonging to a marginalized racial or ethnic group, and you'd like to ask a question or make a comment in the chat, you can choose to include an asterisk at the start of your question, and the chat moderator who is compiling all of the questions will prioritize those with an asterisk. You aren't required to self-identify as it's just an option, but we will do our best to get all of the questions as they come. Now, let me introduce to you our presenters today, Zoi, Lilli, Tia, and Dajah. Take it away.
Thank you all so much for being here with us and for spending a part of your afternoon here today. So we are Project Like a Girl. We are 4 undergraduate students who over the past year and a half have been developing, doing research on, and implementing a curriculum surrounding girls' empowerment, specifically middle to high school age girls. And there's a very large sexual education piece of this. And we all kind of came together on this project under the premise of ourselves really not having a very strong way to understand ourselves during this really hard time during middle and high school. And heading into college, we realized that there were all of these things that we were reading about and talking about that we hadn't done prior. And so our goal with this curriculum is to make it an accessible way for girls at this age to get this education and to head into college and beyond with a better understanding of themselves. So we are going to quickly introduce ourselves here and kind of touch on a brief point as well in this introduction. So talk a little bit about who we are and what spaces challenge us to be empowered as female identifying individuals. So I'll start here. My name is Tia. I am an undergraduate student in the hospitality management department, and I'm a junior at DU. And the space that challenges me most to be empowered is in my career. I work full-time as well as a sommelier in a restaurant downtown. So I'm a wine professional is what that means. And in that kind of wine aspect, I mean, being a woman in restaurants is challenging as it is, but I think being in wine in particular, something very intimidating, has challenged me a lot to remain confident in that position, but also to be very humble, kind of trying to find that right balance of being able to educate our guests, but in a way where it's not intimidating them, that it's coming across with all good intentions. So I will pass it on to Zoi.
Hi everyone, my name is Zoi. I am in my 3rd year at DU. I'm also in my 1st year of my master's program at Corbell in the School of International Studies. And my spaces, there's a lot of spaces that challenge me to be empowered. I grew up with 2 older brothers, so I think home is what challenges me the most. But I am a ski patroller on the weekends, and so that's a very male-dominated area that I find really challenging to kind of prove myself. It's also like a young girl kind of thing, so a lot of intersectionality on that front. But those are my spaces. I love them dearly, and regardless, I will be passing it off to Lilli.
Thank you, Zoi. So my name is Lilli. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And one space that empowers me to be empowered is studying for the LSAT and hopefully going to law school to be a social justice attorney. So that's a big, empowering, challenging space. And I'll pass it on to Dajah.
Thanks, Lilli. Hi, everyone. My name is Dajah. I am a marketing major, 3rd year. However, I will be graduating in the spring, so I'm extremely excited about that. One space that I find very difficult to be in is my internship. I work as a consultant for a consulting firm in my hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I am the only female on a team of 7. So it is definitely very difficult to be in a all-male space when you're trying to get your voice out. So it's wonderful to see all the powerful women that I'm surrounded around all the time.
Thank you so much, Dajah. So we are going to transition to a little bit of an interactive activity. So I am sending a link in the chat. Hopefully this works. And in it, you'll find a place where you can respond to the following question. If you could give yourself, your high school self, one piece of advice, knowing what you know now about being female identifying, what would it be? And with this question, we really just want to challenge you to think about the things that you did and didn't get out of your high school education experience, but also kind of helps us frame a little bit of what we're going to be talking about as far as how to teach the things or how to bridge the gaps that you didn't get. So I will give everybody a little bit to do that poll, and I have the responses on my screen, so I'll just, if you're comfortable, I'll read them out. They're all anonymous, so hopefully, oh, do I need to, is it working?
I think you need to activate it.
Our first technical problem. Awesome. Well, it says it's activated, so I'm going to just send another response link if I can figure out how to do that. Let's see. Okay, try that same link, and if not, I will send another one. Still not? Okay. Then let me just type it manually. Poll. Oh, I sent it wrong. Don't do that one. ev.com/. Let's try that one. Oh, it's not poll en. My keyboard is typing V as. Okay, we're just gonna try this again.
We can also have them think on it too and come back to it at the end if we want, if that would be better.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay,
keep this in your brain. Think about your piece of advice, and then we'll maybe come back at the end to do it. Unless
that one worked, which I'm not thinking it will. I have one more thing to try, and then I promise we'll move on. It's a really fun thing. I love these polls, but they work maybe half of the time. Okay, copy response link. Let's try this one more time and see. The newest link. Is it working? I'm getting a nod. Okay, now I'll wait and let's see if we can get some responses if you feel comfortable doing so. Sorry about that. It wouldn't be Zoom if there wasn't a technical difficulty on one end. We just had to get it out of the way early. Somebody just said they would tell themselves that they are worthy. Another one, high school is the worst it will be. It gets better, so much better. Seek out lots of mentors. Well, something we'll be talking about during this session. To stop doubting yourself and just be who you are. I still think I need to give myself that advice. You got to go where you are because you are able. Wait, because you are. Yes. That there's so much more to learn and explore outside of a small Texas town, and that you will like college much more. Love that one. Focus more on your friendships. Unfortunately, barriers against women still exist, and that you will still be challenged just for being female. Find a strong support system of other women. See being a woman as an advantage rather than a disadvantage. Be more patient with myself. What makes you you is not a weakness. It makes you unique and stand out in a positive way. Stop spending energy on boys and focus on female friendships. They will be your support system later. it's a really weird time, but embrace opportunities, build relationships, and live authentically. You are working to become the person you are meant to be. Advocate for yourself. It will be a struggle, but the outcome is worth it. You got where you are because you are able. We got a correction on that one. These are all amazing, y'all. Thank you so much for sharing. I want you to keep all of that advice in mind. And the reason we kind of started out with this icebreaker and this introduction is because that's how we started out trying to figure out what we were going to do for this project. Is we were like, at what point did we realize that the world was kind of positioned in a way that we felt disadvantaged or felt at a different level than our male counterparts and stuff like that. So we just wanted to kind of bring you through our process and start you where we started. So with that, we are going to transition to the second part and talk a little bit more about the evolution of Project Like a Girl. So talking about our start, middle, and continuation of that. And I'm going to pass it off to Tia to start us off with our research.
So kind of a distilled down version of our initial research, kind of hitting three main points that we really used to guide our project. The first kind of speaking about confidence and the declination of confidence throughout middle and high school. And what I found really kind of alarming, and what we all did about this particular piece of research, was that even by the end of high school, things were not recovering. And I imagine that heading into college, people are still carrying a lot of this lack of confidence and kind of these damaging experiences into their adult life, which is part of the reason why we decided to target this specific group of middle to high school, where all of this, things are very weird, everything is changing, and hopefully that is a place where we can make an impact. And the second one is rumination, where Katty Kay and Claire Shipman wrote a book called The Confidence Code that is a personal favorite and talks a lot about rumination. And the idea is that, and females experience this a lot more than males, where you're dwelling on negative ideas and negative feelings, often about yourself. And this kind of habit of rumination, if we're starting it at this point and we're not really recognizing that it is something we're doing, or it's something that we're making a practice in our lives, that we can very easily carry that into our adult life and not even recognize it then. And so we focused our curriculum pretty heavily on this idea and introduced it to the girls who we worked with. They were all pretty mind blown that they were all doing this already. And they started to become more aware of it and started to kind of work better practices into their schedules, kind of in the morning and at night, of being thoughtful, but not dwelling on these negative things that are happening to them. And so we saw a lot of progress there with ourselves, kind of learning about this, and them as well. And that final point there too, despite, even girls who are very successful on paper and women who are very successful on paper, oftentimes it's the case that we're still not confident, kind of hitting that confidence point again. We can have all of the information lining up to say that we should be confident or that we should be able to be successful, but that's really not always the case. And in that same book too, The Confidence Code, they talk to a lot of women professionals in these fields, WNBA players and women CEOs. And they're realizing that they're trying to unlock kind of what is confidence, who is confident, and how can we help people get there. And they were realizing even people in these positions were not entirely confident and still had a lot of self-doubt. And so these were three things that we wanted to highlight for our research. And we're going to continue on with how we decided to form this project.
So with all of the research that we did, kind of this preliminary survey of what we felt like the problem was, we kind of narrowed it down to the transition between kind of middle and high school. So the 5th to 9th grade area was really seeming like a problem area for a lot of young girls. And this is due to a number of factors, but most pressing kind of is the social media. It's the physical and the psychological developments that are going on. It's going through puberty, it's being around peers. And it's also a lack of female role models, and especially in an environment that doesn't necessarily allow girls to understand the 3 bullet points we put up there. So understanding the nature of your growth. And what this means is understanding what's going on with your body. It's a really weird time when you're transitioning into high school in general as a physical space, but it's also a big transition time in your physical body. So understanding what is going on with that, understanding what is going on with your mind. And the second bullet is combating unhealthy competition. And so this is where you start to see girls really getting into negative headspaces as far as like comparing themselves to others. And we see this age kind of getting younger and younger as more parents and role models are allowing kids to be on social media. They're just consuming this culture of comparison, and it is really unhealthy and inhabiting this really horrible sense of competition between like real people, because you're looking at, oh my gosh, Sally on her Instagram seems like her life is totally fine and mine is totally falling apart. What does that say about me? What does that say about my family? And the last was focusing on developing healthy relationships. And so with these 3 tenets in mind, we created our project to kind of approach those and really foster a sense of like a healthy girls space that was not clouded by social media, that was not clouded by competition, that was just centered on, yes, themselves, but not in a selfish way. It was centered in girls understanding who they were so they could better understand how they were interacting with the community and with their peers and even their own selves. And so I am going to pass it off to Dajah to kind of talk us through our original plan.
Yes, so our original plan, this was all kind of pre-COVID, was truly based on this idea of mentorship. And it started out with a 3-tiered mentorship program that we wanted to kind of create with 2 local schools, one being Creighton Middle School and the other being Lakewood High School. And our vision was very, very grand. We wanted to have a 3-tier mentorship where there were 5 of us at that time. The 5 college girls would be mentors to a group of high school girls, and those high school girls would then be mentors to a group of middle school girls. And it just was to create these connections for not only the girls in high school to see themselves in college, but also for those middle school girls to see themselves in high school and what that transition were to look like. That way they're not just going into whatever space, whatever high school they were going to be going into alone. And that way they knew that they would at least have someone there, whether it be at a local school or another combining school that would actually be in their corner. They could talk to about issues that they had been having on a day-to-day, because that's something that we ran into that none of us really had as we were going from middle school to high school and even high school to college, was that consistent mentor that we could turn to. But COVID ultimately came in. And so our original plan of this 3-tier mentorship shifted a little bit, but I'll pass it to Lilli to kind of explain to you what that transition looked like and what we learned.
Yeah, so like Dajah mentioned, right when we were fully prepared to implement our 3-tiered mentorship program through Lakewood High School and Creighton Middle School, COVID-19 hit and the lockdown began. As a result, we weren't able to implement our original plan, and it was very important to us to meet this challenge with both integrity and innovation. So it would have been totally understandable for us to give up at this point, but the 4 of us really saw the need for this program, and so we had to see it through. So in creating our new plan, we wanted to stay true to our goals of empowerment, connection, and mentorship. But in this new reality, we also had to innovate. As we innovated our project design, we had to have empathy for how all of our stakeholders were coping, and we had to reevaluate our social capital and find the best ways to support the assets already present in the community. We also had to adapt our project to reflect the changing needs of the community and our changing reality. So these goals led us to developing our final project. Can switch to the next slide. So our new project rose above these challenges, and in this section, we'll cover what that looked like and how we innovated with integrity. So the first step in our new project was to enhance the curriculum. So in the first year of our project, we purchased a sexual health curriculum, Smart Girls Life Skills Training, which is a great curriculum that covers topics like navigating relationships, making healthy decisions, and being assertive. However, we recognize that this curriculum was abstinence-based, which interestingly enough, abstinence-based curriculums are actually correlated with the highest rates of teen pregnancy. So they're not very effective, and they're also not very empowering. And we also recognize that the language and terminology of Smart Girls wasn't as inclusive as we wanted to be. So while Smart Girls was a great starting point, we made extensive revisions, added several new lessons and a multitude of activities, and ultimately created our own Project Like a Girl curriculum that is more holistic, inclusive, and empowering. And it was essential to us that our curriculum would also be accessible. So it is up on our website so that any groups can use it in their own communities, however that looks. So we'll drop a link in the chat, and please feel free to use our curriculum and adapt it to your own needs if there's any way you'd like to do that. So to break this down as a timeline, in the fall and winter of 2019, we formed our team and created our mission and vision. We met with stakeholders and secured our original community partnerships. Then in the start of 2020, we had to switch gears to an online format and held a few prototype sessions with girls from different groups. Then we revised the curriculum in the fall of 2020, and finally we were able to secure a partnership with Thomas Jefferson High School. Starting in 2021, we taught our 11-week curriculum to a group of about 10 girls online. And I'll hand it over to Zoi to provide a more detailed overview of the curriculum we produced.
Thank you, Lilli. So yes, this is the point of the presentation that a lot of facilitators, this is a really good time to tune in, just because this is how we felt that you could kind of teach empowerment. It's a super abstract concept. It's like kind of trying to teach love or trying to teach empathy. You don't really know how to do it. So we divided it into a set of stages that I'll go through. So like I mentioned, we wanted the girls to first understand themselves, what was going on with their bodies. Second, understand what they were putting out into the world. And third, understanding how they were interacting with others. And so our curriculum starts with self-esteem, where I'm pretty sure everything should start in the world with self-esteem, but we started with self-esteem and we really framed it as a values-based practice. And so allowing the girls to explore what their values were, but also explore and challenge and critically analyze where their values were coming from, how they were a product of how they were raised, and how they were also a unique individual that formed their own identities. And so we started with this self-esteem, and then we took all of those values that we boiled down in these first two lessons, and we kind of applied it more to understanding how you make decisions, understanding why you make the decisions that you do, and really putting that critical analysis on the girls to understand their own environment. And so at this point, the girls are understanding a little bit more about their identity, but also understanding about who is around them, what is their family having to do with how their values are impacted, and most importantly, how their environment is impacting the situations that they're in, but also their ability to react to the situations that they're in. And at this point, we transitioned a little bit more into the sexual health and education part of it. And that was our knowing our bodies section. And so understanding the effects of puberty, but also understanding what is going on with your mind at this time, and really trying to validate that and really try and work with those things holistically rather than isolated. And at this point, we got to bring in a super cool guest speaker from BC for You. And BC for You is a nonprofit dedicated to giving free sexual resources to women under 25. And so none of these girls even knew, though, some of these resources like this existed. And so this was really a point in our curriculum that we felt strongly about connecting them with their community and connecting them with resources that they can go to throughout their life, but also connecting them so they can share with their peers. And at that point, we kind of transitioned a little bit more to understanding how they interact with others in our navigating relations section. And so in this section, we focused on inhibiting kind of those unhealthy relationships, but perpetuating really healthy and positive relationships. And I think we were all shocked to know how many people in our group had experience already with unhealthy relationships, and also being in college and reflecting on, oh my gosh, we're teaching this lesson. We're like, maybe our relationships aren't that great. And that co-curriculum, that teacher student, but also like teacher facilitator relationship was really cool at this point. And the girls were asking incredibly challenging questions at this point and really getting into the curriculum, which was super cool to see. And then we kind of branch out into expanding your knowledge and how to be assertive. So really giving girls advice onto how to apply all of the topics that we've been talking about. That was something that was really important to us throughout the curriculum, was not only giving them the lessons and giving them the tools, but also showing them and watching them use the tools themselves. And we talked about different styles of conflict and conflict resolution and things that I think we all wish we had learned a lot earlier than college. And then we kind of wrapped up our curriculum with a little bit more external facing. And so understanding how you can interact with social media. That was a big lesson. We had at this point an extreme pleasure for another guest speaker, Virgie Tovar, who Lilli's going to talk about in a little, but she is an amazing author that we really look to throughout this process. And then our last one was making connections and using the connections that you're making for your future, but also for just yourself in general, and understanding which of those connections are going to nourish you and which of those connections are really going to propel you. And so with that, I will turn it over to Lilli, and she can talk a little bit more about our guiding book.
Awesome, thank you. So for a bit of background, Virgie Tovar describes herself as a fat activist, which means she embraces and advocates for body positivity for all types of bodies, especially those which are marginalized in society, which are typically larger bodies and bodies of people of color. Virgie Tovar is an educator with her own curriculums and a podcast, the Rebel Eaters Club, and has published several books. Virgie offers a lot of great resources that we would definitely recommend you check out if you're interested. Her book, The Self-Love Revolution, Radical Body Positivity for Girls of Color, was a vital supplement for Project Like a Girl. We were actually able to provide all the girls in our program with a copy of the book, thanks to a grant from DU Grand Challenges. And the book was very helpful as it covers great activities like writing a love letter to your body and descriptions of the social forces that might lower our self-images, such as the media, our families, and peer groups. The self-love revolution moves through analyzing the systemic oppression embedded in the norms of beauty in our society and diet culture, and how to manifest self-love in spite of it. Virgie also gives tangible advice on how to make loving your body an everyday practice and how to be empowered by your relationship with your body. So like Zoi mentioned, Virgie was incredibly generous with her time and co-facilitated one of our sessions on how to navigate the media in a healthy way. One great metaphor she provided that I just wanted to share really quick is that our world is like a garden and all of our bodies are like plants in that garden. And just like we wouldn't want a garden with only one type of plant, diversity in our types of bodies just adds more beauty to life. So Virgie's book was one resource we utilized to make our curriculum more inclusive, holistic, and empowering. And I'll let Dajah say more about our challenges and what we learned from them.
Thanks, Lilli. So yeah, we definitely had a lot of challenges and a lot of realizations as this whole process went through. One of the biggest ones was definitely spending time educating ourselves on a lot of different topics, and that includes inclusivity and kind of that diversity implementation of everything. While we all thought that we knew a lot about the topic, as we dive deeper and like really understand, we all learned we very much touched the surface of the entire situation. So we really spent a lot of time educating ourselves so that we had the best information to educate those that we were going to be teaching. So with that, it also comes the idea of thinking in multiple perspectives. We definitely had to think outside of our own comfort boxes to really understand what it meant to be able to teach this curriculum to girls who were much younger than us, and also we're living in a different time than we were when we were in high school, and understanding kind of what this would mean for them in their everyday lives and kind of what our involvement in the program with them would actually mean for them. So we had to definitely think outside of the box. And we also had to think of a way where how would the school receive this information as we would be coming in to teach the curriculum as outsiders to the education force, and seeing how that would really affect the way that things happen. And then lastly, catering a program to the specific community. That goes back to really understanding TJ, which will be talked about here in a little while, and kind of understanding what that means for these girls. While we made a very broad curriculum, we can't just teach that to one specific group and say it's going to be like this for everyone. We very much catered it to the girls. As we got to know who they were, got to understand what their likes, dislikes were, we were really able to make sure that we catered our curriculum to them. And with all of that being said, one thing that we found extremely crucial during this entire time was that editing and going back and revisions were very, very crucial to the continuation of our program. We actually edited it every single week as we made a different lesson to make sure that, we were really catering to the girls, and we were being extremely inclusive to understand, are we using gender inclusive terminology? Are we going through and are we really understanding what these girls are wanting, and are we being able to do that in a way that they're receiving it? So with all of that, I'll kind of pass it off to Tia to talk about how mentorship played into our project and how we really wanted to utilize that portion of it.
Yes, so mentorship was this kind of base of our entire project, and something that I hope all of you can take tangibly from this is just how to integrate mentorship more into your own lives in a lot of different capacities, because there really isn't enough mentorship out there. And the first thing that I want you thinking about is the idea of reciprocity mentorship. So reciprocity, the balance of giving and receiving. I think traditionally, sometimes we think about mentorship as just a one-way street of the mentee gaining from the mentor, but it really is the case, and we've all found that it's been the case throughout this project, that you learn so much about your own strengths and your own identity from being a mentor and from being on the complete opposite side of it. And it makes you, I think, a better mentee as you're gaining other mentors in your life. And so thinking about making all of these relationships go both ways and really putting in the work to have that happen in your own life is completely transformational for those relationships. And to put that into practice, I think the first thing to think about is to know your own strengths. So really be thoughtful and really take some time to self-reflect, and whether that be writing or however you self-reflect, understand what your strengths are. How have all of your life experiences built you up to the person that you are, and what strengths do you have in that sense that you can transfer onto other people? How can you help people get to maybe where you are, or how can they learn from what you've learned? And then on the flip side of that, understanding your weaknesses. And I think as a mentee, this is really important too, because as you're seeking mentors, and whatever this weakness may be, or maybe less of a weakness, but more of as an opportunity in your life, or something that you want to improve on, look for people who you really admire having certain qualities that can help you get there. And I think that can be on the other side of it too, and being really vulnerable as a mentor with your mentee. I have a lot of incredible mentors in my life, and they are fortunately extremely vulnerable with me, and they share their weaknesses and what they're going through, and it really has helped me learn a lot from them in that sense as well. And just, confidence, we've been talking about, is one of the most challenging things in life. But as confident as you can be in your own strengths and in your own weaknesses and your own identity, that will help your mentees learn from you even more, because they see that, it's all a journey. Nothing's perfect. You're going to go through some things. And you're going to share that with them, and they can kind of see how to adjust and not expect that things are going to always go perfectly. And number 4, seek to understand. And that involves a lot of active listening too. And I'm sure you all have had conversations about active listening in your own communities, or in your own families. It's not just about being there and listening, but really responding in a way that's thoughtful and provoking, kind of going deeper into certain really difficult conversations potentially. But as a mentor and as a mentee, that relationship should be very vulnerable and should kind of allow that kind of conversation to happen. And it can for sure take it to new levels if that's the case. And number 5, be friendly assertive. This is one of my favorites, because we talk a lot about being assertive in our curriculum, and being assertive versus being aggressive. And I think being assertive involves respect, kind of first and foremost, and drawing a line where your comfort level is. And we talk to the girls a lot about this too, because being assertive involves, setting boundaries in a way where you're showing that you respect the other person so much that you need them to know that this is where you draw the line, and not in a way, you know, that's gonna make them kind of exit that relationship, but to maintain it and to build it stronger. And to, I think that's also, you being assertive involves being vulnerable very heavily, but also being confident in where your own comfort level is in multiple areas of your life. And I think number 6, this one I think of in the workplace a lot, workplace drama or classroom drama. I think it's really important to just not participate in that, especially if you're among a space of women, and you're in the workplace, and it's important that we support each other. We hear this all the time, but really not participating in any of that and setting a good example for the people around you not to, you know, engage and not to kind of provoke this kind of behavior, because then it can really continue and become damaging for your own relationships or for other people and their own relationships. And that's just not ever what we want. And I think going off of that, having people's back, especially thinking about the mentors in your life and the mentees in your life, just having that confidence that those people in your life will have your back when you make mistakes, especially, and that they know that your intentions are right, and you know that their intentions are right. And to help them grow and to help them, and giving even just one person being there to support you like that can make a lot of difference in how you respond to challenges and how you respond to failure. And finally, laugh together. I think this is the most important, if you're taking away anything out of that list, is that mentorship is really fun, and it's really exciting, and it should be really kind of just thoughtful and or thoughtless sometimes, and just, you know, allowing you to sit back and just enjoy the time together, because ultimately these people, these mentors or mentees, can become really lasting relationships, and like we were talking about a little bit earlier, carrying as many of those positive relationships, especially if they're female relationships in your life, as far as they can go, is pretty special. So we are going to, one thing I want you to think about too, on our next slide here, just kind of heading to this next section, as we've been talking about reciprocity and mentorship in general, just thinking about who in your life is a mentor, maybe officially or unofficially, but who in your life are you grateful for, who kind of serves in this role, and just kind of let that carry on for the rest of your day. And if you haven't in a while, tell these people thank you, and tell these people that you really appreciate what they do for you and their role in your life. So we have a couple slides next just showing our time at Thomas Jefferson High School and the girls that we got to spend so much time with over the past couple weeks.
Yeah, so transitioning a little bit more into like what our project turned into. Fortunately, we were able to celebrate the end of our curriculum in person, but it was actually all taught virtually, which I guess you can say thank you, COVID. But we taught it once a week for an hour for 11 weeks. And it was pretty consistent. We had ranging from like 8 to 10 girls every class. And this was our cohort. These were our ladies that we got to work with all quarter. Or all of our quarter, all of their semester. And we started off, like we said, with our self-esteem journey. And I think the biggest part that blew us away was how comfortable they were sharing things and how vulnerable they were being. And I think an important part of that is the tone that we set at the very beginning of a space that was inclusive, a space that was welcoming, a space that was going to be kind and loving and empathetic. And I think when you preface a space, whether that's a class, whether that's a session, when you preface those spaces with those expectations and with those feelings, then the girls kind of take it and run. They really did. They took that as an invitation to be vulnerable, an invitation to be real, and let those walls down. It was so cute. Like the first couple meetings we had, one person would like interrupt the other one. They're like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And it's so funny, the kind of Zoom etiquette that way. But you could tell like from the very beginning that they really did care about each other, and that was held throughout the entire class. And so like I mentioned, we'd meet every Wednesday for an hour, and we'd have these discussions. Most of them would go a little bit longer because the girls love to talk so much and interact with us. And we each kind of mentored the entire group. It was all four of us, and each of them kind of gravitated towards all of us. Sometimes one person for one week and one person for the other, but we taught them all collaboratively. So all of our lessons were taught by all four of us. As I believe Dajah mentioned, we would get together the week before and we would edit the curriculum to try and modify our lessons to what the girls were feeling from the previous weeks. And we'd always start a session with what they learned from last week and how they were applying the things that they learned from the previous sessions to their daily life. And we do activities, and we usually end with a deliverable, whether that was a letter to your body, whether that was a collage, whether that was any kind of creative manifestation of how your confidence was building throughout the process. And finally, we got to celebrate, like I mentioned, in person. And it was really, really fun to see the ladies in person. That's so weird. You like know people so well over a computer, but it was really rewarding to see all of them. And a couple of them are getting ready to go off to college, and a couple of them are just starting high school. So it was a wide array of age ranges, but they all got a lot out of the program. And I'm going to let Lilli talk a little bit more about their perspective.
Thank you, Zoi. So like Tia said, with the reciprocity of mentorship, we all really grew a lot from the process of being mentees. Getting to work with this incredible group of girls has had a tremendous effect on all our lives. I learned so much from the creativity, compassion, resilience, and determination from the girls in the group. Like Zoi mentioned, being mentors and facilitators made us have to kind of practice what we were preaching, and the girls were not afraid to call us out when we didn't. And they just challenged and inspired us to stay true to our values and identities. They also challenged each other and were able to disagree in productive ways where they treated each other with kindness and respect. They simultaneously stood up for themselves and their own values while also truly listening to and encouraging their peers in spite of their differences. And one of the most wonderful rewards from Project Like a Girl was seeing that the girls were just as impacted as all of us. When we asked the girls for feedback, one said, "I really loved this program. I was surprised by how comfortable I felt I could be with everyone. We were able to discuss topics very openly and in a way that was empowering, which changed my perspective on a lot of topics." And to us, hearing this feedback really validated what we found in our research, which is that all girls' spaces are incredibly powerful. They have the ability to mitigate that unhealthy competition among girls and create healthy friendships instead. And through the curriculum we spent so much time creating, the girls actually walked away with new perspectives and learned something. Another quote was, "PLAG has really helped me identify my values, become more confident, more open with my thoughts, and being able to grow with the people in this club. Honestly, I wouldn't be who I am today without it." It was really powerful to hear that Project Like a Girl had the results we had hoped for, that girls would emerge as more confident, educated, and empowered women. When we hosted our final celebration, the girls all surprised us by writing individual letters to each of us, saying how much the program meant to them. And they told us we weren't allowed to read the letters until we got home because we would cry. And I at least definitely did. These letters were incredibly thoughtful, kind, and appreciative, and really showed us that the relationship we cultivated with our girls was very special and meant a lot to them. So if you take away anything from today's session, know that there really is true power in all girl and all women spaces, and that mentorship experiences are profoundly impactful for both the mentee and the mentor. And of course, women are powerful, and we're even more powerful when we support each other. So with that, Dajah is going to take it over and explain some more about what we learned and accomplished through Project Like a Girl.
Yeah, so we really wanted to take away and figure out what our lessons learned were and kind of how we got to where we are. So 3 of our biggest themes that we realized throughout the entire project really boiled down to adaptability, mentorship, and inclusivity. So starting with adaptability, we really were able to change directions even during the unexpected times. We were able to really see what we needed to go towards to ultimately get to our end goal. And we also were able to see how we should change our lessons in order to more specialize towards the girls that we were teaching. Going into our mentorship idea, this was the key factor throughout the entire situation. And it was our central focus of all of our work. We really wanted to make sure that all of the girls felt comfortable enough to talk to each of us about difficult topics, even when they didn't know a lot about the topic itself. And then lastly, coming into inclusivity. One thing that we wanted to emphasize is that anyone and everyone is welcome. All we wanted to do was really support and be able to be there for girls who otherwise may not have had a female space. Taking the extra time to really examine is what made our project different. We reached out to as many people as we could to really get their perspective on how our curriculum looked. We asked individuals from the DU QSA or the Queer Student Alliance. We got psychology professors from Northeastern State University in Oklahoma. We brought in people from the Empowerment Project in Denver, and the list just goes on and on. So we really wanted to take time to ensure that we made our program as inclusive as possible. So with all of that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Tia and Lilli to wrap it up for the day.
All right, so a challenge for you all in your time after this session, and kind of like I was talking about before, in thanking your mentors. It's so important that you have the confidence in yourself and in your strengths and your abilities to go and seek people to mentor as well. And I mean, it doesn't have to kind of fall into this traditional mentorship model or like a standard kind of relationship. It can be your peers. It can be people who are in an entirely different field or have entirely different interests than you. But to really seek that kind of relationship in your life, and especially right now, where a lot of the time we're interacting, especially through the university, with people online. We've realized throughout all of this that, I mean, we were very nervous at first that doing this over Zoom was not going to kind of produce the same results that we wanted to do if we were to have it in person. But truly, I mean, I think not letting that be an excuse and really to go out and to put the time in and to put the time into these relationships, because they are so important and so meaningful, and they're what make the world go round. So if you are meeting with a current mentor or find a new mentor or mentee, use this hashtag on the screen. And we're going to kind of be keeping tabs on it because we have a couple things that we'd like to give out. And so this will kind of enter you in a chance to win some of those things. And then we'll be in touch after that. But we really also just want to see all of the relationships that you all are experiencing in this positivity and empowering female spaces. So I'll pass it over to Lilli.
Awesome. So we have a really fun tradition that we like to do after every meeting we end, and we've been doing this for 2 years. So before we get to that special tradition that you should be very excited about, we just wanted to open it up to any questions that you might have, and just if any thoughts you want to share, anything you'd like us to expand on, feel free to type those in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them, or you can, of course, hop on the mic as well. And we just love to answer any of your questions.
And for this, I'm going to stop sharing screen just so you can see all of us at one time.
This isn't even a question, but I did see one that I missed on the poll that I sent out earlier, and it was keep your sparkle. I thought it was too cute not to share, so.
I want to know what they called you out on. Y'all mentioned that they.
There was a lesson we were doing on like how we all speak to ourselves, and so they really remember that lesson. That was at the very beginning. And later down the line, there were points where we were just kind of like sharing casually, but we were not speaking about ourselves in the most positive light. And they were like, hold on, this is not what you taught us. this is not what we spent 2 lessons on. And so it's, I mean, you know, and we explained too, we're like, we're also super new at this. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, it's really hard to keep that in your life as a practice. And so we were like, keep calling us out and keep calling each other out on that, because in your spaces, if you're being positive like that, then people will start behaving right. And we, after that, we were really careful not to be negative in how we were speaking about ourselves.
And that, I mean, even translated to how we interact with each other in this group. Like we would, I mean, we're friends outside of this program, this group. And so we would be hanging out and then somebody said something mean about themselves and we're all like, hey, not here, not this space.
Are there any other questions before we move on to our very exciting tradition? No, okay, all right. Also, I'll tell you what the tradition is. So we like to do a cheer at the end of every meeting where we put our hands in like this. And after 3, we say like a girl. So if you would feel comfortable, I would invite you to turn on your microphone, turn on your camera. Of course, if you feel comfortable, just to be super excited. And if not, we'll do it. So again, we're just gonna put our hands in, get that excitement. And we're gonna say like a girl after 3. Everyone ready? All right. 1, 2, 3. Like a girl.
Like a girl.
Awesome.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you all so much.
Have a great rest of your Friday.
Thank you so much for coming.